The Ottoman Empire in 1650. In 1650, the Ottoman Empire occupied lands in Europe, Asia and Africa. In Europe, Ottoman territory encompassed most of the Balkan Peninsula south of the rivers Danube and Sava, and the lands of central Hungary to the north, the principalities of Transylvania, Wallachia, Moldavia and the Crimea which lay between Hungary and the Black Sea were tributaries of the Ottoman Sultan. In Asia, the empire extended eastwards from the Bosphorus to the mountainous border with Iran, and southwards to the headwaters of the Gulf, and to Yemen in the southwest of the Arabian Peninsula. In Africa, the lands of the empire comprised part of the western littoral of the Red Sea, the wealthy province of Egypt, and the semi-autonomous outposts of Tripoli, Tunis, and Algiers. In the Mediterranean, Cyprus and most of the islands of the Aegean archipelago were Ottoman possessions. By 1669, so too was Crete. Europeans in the 17th century, as they still do, normally referred to the empire as the Turkish Empire, and to its people, or at least its Muslim people, as Turks and Apos. These designations are, however, only partially correct. The population of the empire was heterogeneous in religion, language and social structure. As the faith of the sultans and of the ruling elite, Islam was the dominant religion. But the Greek and Armenian Orthodox churches retained an important place within the political structure of the empire, and ministered to large Christian populations which, in many areas, outnumbered Muslims. There was also a substantial population of Ottoman Jews. Following the settlement there of Jews expelled from Spain in 1492, Thessaloniki had become the city with the largest Jewish population anywhere in the world. One outside these main groups, there were 1. Numerous other Christian and non-Christian communities, such as the Maronites and Druzes of Lebanon. Linguistic groups were as varied and overlapping as religious communities. In the Balkan Peninsula, Slavonic, Greek and Albanian speakers were undoubtedly in the majority, but besides these, there were substantial minorities of Turks and Romance-speaking Vlachs. In Anatolia, Turkish was the majority language, but this was also an area of Greek and Armenian speech and, in the east and southeast, Kurdish. In Syria, Iraq, Arabia, Egypt and North Africa, most of the population spoke dialects of Arabic with, above them, a Turkish-speaking elite. However, in no province of the empire was there a unique language. The social structure of the empire was also varied. The economy of the Ottoman Empire was overwhelmingly agricultural, and the glory of the sultans, as political writers frequently emphasize, rested on the labor of the peasantry. However, the types of agriculture and livestock rearing, as well as the social structure of villages and peasant households, varied with different traditions and with the variations in terrain and climate. In contrast with the peasantry, a part of the empire's population led a semi-nomadic, pastoral existence, often at odds with the settled peoples and government. Among these groups were the Bedouin on the desert margins of Arabia, Syria, and Egypt, the Vlachs of the Balkan Peninsula and the Turkish-speaking tribesmen of Anatolia, northern Syria and southeastern Europe. In the mid-17th century, the political and military elite tended to be of Albanian or Caucasian, that is, typically, Georgian, Abkhazian or Circassian, descent. To the legal and religious figures who staffed the religious colleges, law courts and mosques were more likely to be Turks, in the Western Balkans, Bosnians or, in the Arabic-speaking provinces, Arabs. The Ottoman Empire was, in short, multinational. Certain groups certainly enjoyed an advantage in the competition for political office, and rivalry between ethnic factions was an important element in Ottoman politics. In principle, however, discrimination existed only on grounds of religion. Muslims alone could achieve political office or pursue careers in the scribal service, but even here, Muslim descent was not necessary. Many, if not most, political office holders were first or second generation converts from Christianity. It was the judicial offices that were, to the Ottoman Empire, 1300 to 1650, the preserve of old Muslim families. One vital organ of government, however, remained open to non-Muslims. Many of the men who engaged in the risky if potentially profitable activity of tax farming were Christians or Jews. The Ottoman Empire was not, therefore, exclusively Islamic, nor was it exclusively Turkish. Rather, it was a dynastic empire in which the only loyalty demanded of all its multifarious inhabitants was allegiance to the Sultan. The loyalty demanded of those who did not hold office consisted in no more than not rebelling and paying taxes in cash, kind or services. Even these were often negotiable. It was in the person of the Sultan and not religious, ethnic or other identity that held the empire together. Nevertheless, it is not wholly misguided to refer to the sultans, in their Ottoman designation, well-protected realms as the Turkish Empire and Apos. By the 17th century, literate circles in Istanbul would not identify themselves as Turks, and often, in phrases such as Turkish mischief makers or senseless Turks, use the word as a term of abuse. Nonetheless, Turkish in a refined form was the language of government and the lingua franca of the elite. A vizier might, by origin, be an Albanian, a Croat or an Abkhaz, but for all official and most literary purposes he would use Turkish and not his native tongue. As the language of power, Turkish had prestige throughout the empire. Furthermore, despite their abuse, the Ottoman elite seems always to have thought of Muslim Turks as the most reliable of the Sultan's subjects. The settlement of Turkish colonies in the Balkans had accompanied the Ottoman conquest in the 14th and 15th centuries, and again, the years after the conquest of Cyprus in 1573 had witnessed the forcible removal to the island of Turks from Anatolia. The deportees were sometimes troublemakers at home, but the intention was that with their removal to a distant territory they would form a nucleus of loyal Ottoman subjects. It should be noted, however, that the sultans also resettled non-Turkish groups, such as the Jewish community implanted on Cyprus, after 1573 in order to stimulate the commercial life of the island. The Jews, like the Turks, had a reputation for loyal endeavor. The reason for the dominance in the empire of the Turkish language and the important, although unprivileged position of the chronology 3 Turks lies in the empire's origins and in the history of Anatolia in the 2.5 centuries before its foundation.